Hello, Miss Sarah. I'm Mischa Yumi from the class G7A. Today, I'll be telling you the two important events that happened in Japan. The first event is the Russo-Japanese War. After the First Sino War, the Japanese sought a deal with Russia, but Russia refused. The Japanese were furious. On the night of 8 February 1904, the Japanese Imperial Navy sent a surprise torpedo boat attack on the Russian ship at the border under the leadership of Admiral Togo, destroying three of the largest Russian battleships. The attacks developed the next day, but as naval engagement followed, the Japanese couldn't attack the Russian fleet and the Russian wouldn't leave the harbor. During the Battle of Yalu River on May 1, 1904, Japanese stormed Russian position and drove the Russian back towards Port Arthur. The Russians' warship trapped in Port Arthur tried to go to Vladivostok to meet the other Russian fleet, but the Japanese found out, forcing them to go back to Port Arthur and also killing the commander. However, on 15 May 1904, the Russians were able to damage two Japanese battleships. At the end of the month, the Japanese continued bombarding the Russians again. Eventually, by the end of 1904, the Japanese were able to capture the key hilltop bastion, shelled the Russian fleet, and all capital ships of the Russian fleet in the Pacific were sunk. After all of the sufferings of the Russians, Cecil decided to surrender on 2 January 1905, but it wasn't known by the Russians. The Russian Second Army between 25 and 29 January attacked the Japanese left flank near the town of Sandapu, but the battle was inconclusive. During the Battle of Mukden on 20 February 1905, the Japanese forces proceeded to assault the Russian forces surrounding Mukden. The Russians were in full retreat and were sent back to North Mukden on 14 March. In May 1905, the Russians searched their way to go to the Sea of Japan to get to Vladivostok. Soon, the Japanese Navy attempted to block the Russian path to Vladivostok and had a battle at the Tsushima Strait late on May 27, 1905. By the end of the next day, the Russians had gotten so many great losses. This victory of the Japanese forced the Russians to do a peace agreement, so Japan and Russia made the Treaty of Portsmouth on September 5, 1905, which made Russia turn over the post-Arthur to Japanese, to leave Manchuria, and to recognize Japanese control of the Korean peninsula. The second event is the Manchurian Incident. After the Russo War ended, the Japanese had an interest in the Manchurians. On the night of September 18, 1931, Japanese troops used the pretext of an explosion along the South Manchuria Railway. The explosive did little damage to the railway, and trains continued to use the route. The next morning, two artillery pieces installed opened fire on the Chinese garrison nearby in response to the false Chinese attack on the railway. But the Chinese troops were no match for the Japanese troops. By evening, the fighting was over. The Japanese had occupied Mukden. Soon later, on September 21, Japanese reinforcements from Korea came. After 5 months from the incident, Japanese troops had overrun Manchuria despite China's resistance. During this time, the Chinese government was preoccupied with problems that caused many refugees. Because of that, the Chinese Foreign Ministry on 19 September protested and insisted the stop of Japanese military operation in Manchuria and appealed to the League of Nations with a solution on 24 February. However, Japan rejected and insisted on negotiation with the Chinese government, but there weren't any results. On 7 January 1932, Secretary Stimson issued his Stimson Doctrine that the US wouldn't recognize any government that was established because of Japanese action in Manchuria. A League of Nations commission disembarked at Shanghai to examine the situation on February 14. After the examination, the Leighton Report was published and rejected the Japanese claim that the Manchuria invasion and occupation was an act of self-defense on 2 October. Soon, Japan resigned from the League of Nations in March 1933. That is all for today. Thank you for your attention.